Today we're going to talk about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. What is it? What makes it different? Is it any good? And more importantly, is it worth your money? Stick around to find out. Hello Game Masters and welcome back to Second Rate DMs. My name is Scott and today we're going to talk about the long anticipated Pathfinder 2nd Edition. But before we get into that, I want to welcome those of you that are here for the first time. Here at Second Rate DMs we talk about news, reviews, and all sorts of tabletop role-playing game products that we display here on our channel. If that's the kind of thing that you like and you enjoy, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. The little bell icon thing, if you're into that, that's all right too. But follow us. We've got all kinds of reviews for different games out there. But hey, let's talk about Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So what is Pathfinder 2nd Edition? For those of you that have been in the gaming scene for a while, you know that Pathfinder originally started in 2009 and it started off of the Dungeons & Dragons 3.5 open gaming license, or OGL as a lot of us typically like to refer to it as. And with that being said, they've been doing this. They kind of did that when 4th edition D&D kind of split off, and then Pathfinder went this way and D&D went this way. The weird thing is that Pathfinder really kept at popularity, keeping with that 3.5, that traditional background and set. So with the 2nd edition, this is their first attempt at what I would call their own product, something that is uniquely theirs. Granted, it's still a D20 system. It still operates actually underneath the open gaming license, but the product itself is wholly unique, something that you really have to take a look at to understand what makes it so different. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about what makes it different, what rule sets are there, really what the mechanics are that make it so different from Dungeons & Dragons 3.5, 5th edition, and Pathfinder, the original itself. So let's first start with how to create a character. So how do you create a character in Pathfinder 2nd Edition? Well, they've broken it down to the ABCs. And yeah, that sounds kind of elementary, but you know what? They put together a nice, easy way for us to remember it. And that's ancestry, which what used to be your races. And what they've done with your ancestry is that, yes, it's your race. So you have your humans, your elves, your dwarves, and now your goblins, thank goodness, as well as some other things. But what they've done is they've broken those ancestries down into, you have your sub-races as well. Just like kind of what 5th edition did and what some other role-playing games have done is they've broken the basic race and then your sub-races. But here, what they've done is that those sub-races give you more abilities as you go down the line. So they've taken all the front-load racial features. So now when you pick like an elf, you don't have to write 30 different things down. They've pulled that stuff out and allow you to make those choices through feats, and we'll get to that here in a little bit, but feats that allow you, ancestry feats that allow you to do different things and make different choices. So if you are a wood elf, you have options to have different wood elf feats. Or if you're a human, you have your skill-based human, you have your feat-based human, and one of my personal favorite things they did is they got rid of half elf and half orc and made that a human subrace. Now, I really, really like this idea. I don't feel that half elves and half orcs should have ever had their own unique thing. They always should have just been under the humans to begin with. And I'm hoping that we'll see the Aasimar, the Tiefling, and other half races here in the future do something similar. You move on from your ancestry, and then you go to your background. And your background, quite honestly, is about the same thing that you've seen in a lot more modern RPGs. It's going to be, where you came from, some skill bonuses, some stat bonuses that go along with that. And that's essentially your background. Yes, you can craft your own just like always, but this does codify some things, part of specifically the stats, which I'll get into here in just a few minutes. But then of course you have your classes. Now classes in Pathfinder 2nd Edition are really unique. And the reason I say this is because when you're sitting down at the table, you could easily have a table full of fighters, okay? All fighters, between their races, their race choices, their ancestral feats, their skill feats, and their class feats, which is something else here that's a little bit new, you're going to have completely different characters, even though they're all playing the same class. And the reason that is that at every level there is no dead choice. Every single level not only grants you, sure, you may gain a class ability here, but then you also have options of the class feats. And with those class feats is a smorgasbord of options that you can choose from to really get your character down to the taste that you want it to be in. And I find that to be extremely unique and really awesome. Add that to the general feats that are in there, the skill feats, and again, those ancestry feats, and you really have a mix of something truly unique. Now, not only is that there, but then each class also has subclasses that are built within it. So you have, obviously, your clerics, you have your different churches and your different religions, you have your different wizard schools for wizards, sorceries or bloodlines, etc. But your fighters and your rogues, there's different, the rogues, I think there's the ruffian, there's the scoundrel, and I think maybe the thief or something along those lines. But the point being is that there are different subclasses within the classes, and then of course all those feats. And some of those class feats do require that you are in a particular subclass. So they really do have their own unique flavors. On the topic of feats, let's discuss feats. So Pathfinder did essentially what they've always been good at, and that is give a breadth of options. But instead of going up, as in your traditional Pathfinder that we've dealt with for the last 9 years and 3.5 years before that, you really build your character more out. So you're giving your character more options, more abilities, more things to do versus +1s here, +2s there, +5s there. So within those feats, you have your ancestry feats, like I told you about. Those are from your race. You have your skill feats, which if you're familiar with 3rd edition and Pathfinder, they're basically skills they're feats that allow you to tap into those skills to do extra things like tricks from some of the older editions, which is always unique. Or they'll give you just a little extra push when you're doing a particular skill. And then of course your feats are, like I said, your general feats, your class feats, whatever. They've also built multiclassing into this feat system. And so what they've done here is they've created what they call archetype feats, which works very similar if you're familiar with 4th edition, and I know a lot of people don't like to talk about it, but if you're familiar with 4th edition, there was an option in there for multiclassing called hybrid. And the way that worked is you would get a little bit from this class and a little bit from this class, but you could take from that other class as you wanted throughout the course of your levels. And that's exactly how the archetype feats work. So you basically take a devotion feat. So if I'm a fighter and I want to be, I don't know, part druid, I would take the druidic devotion feat. And what that does is whenever I hit certain levels, instead of taking the class feat that I would choose from fighter, I could choose one over here from druid and stick it in here. This gives you unique options like adding a little spell casting, or in the case of the druid, you could have a little bit of wild shape, or maybe you could have a little bit of an animal companion if that's something you want to do. So it really allows you to blend characters together without getting overly powered over here. One of the unique things they put together there is that those individual devotion feats, and there's one for each class, is that you can't pick another devotion feat. So if I wanted to be a fighter, druid, ranger, for example, I couldn't get that ranger devotion until I took at least 2 feats from the druidic devotion. So that keeps it from becoming a little crazy and having your dips, your first level dips that we used to see in Pathfinder in 3rd edition and honestly a little bit in 5th edition too. Those little dips that give you those little power spikes, that's gone. I've kind of touched on this a little bit here and there with the stats and the skills, but how are your stats put together? They did what they did, Pathfinder 2nd edition does what they did in Starfinder, and that is everyone starts off with a base 10, and then between your ABCs, you get to choose, you get different stats. So the elf might give you +2 dex or a +2 con, probably not con, but charisma or something like that. And then your background will give you a couple stats, and then your class will give you a couple stats, and then you end up adding that on top of that 10, and it gives you this nice rounded out character of your choosing. Now I have found playing Starfinder that this is a really nice balance between the boringness of straight arrays like 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, and the monotonous of point buy systems. Because this way you can mold your character the way you want, and you're not necessarily going to start off with a weak character because this is Pathfinder. The Paizo doesn't really work off of weak characters. It's really not what it's about. It's about that strength and that power fantasy. Your hit points are also built into between your race and your class. Exactly the same as Starfinder, which is very nice. It makes sense that a dwarven fighter would have different health than, say, a gnome fighter. So what about the meat and potatoes? The meat and potatoes of this system basically works on what they call UTEML, or untrained, trained, expert, master, and legendary. And the way this works is these are your proficiency bonuses. Untrained is 0, trained is 2, expert 4, master 6, and then legendary is 8, right? So these are your different proficiency levels. It's not a flat bonus like in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, or just a flat bonus like in 4th edition that raised with you. So if you were trained in something, you get 2 plus your level plus your stat bonus into that skill. So there's a big difference between someone who's untrained in thievery, who would only get their stat bonus, so maybe it was a stealth, so let's say they get a +2, versus someone who has that same 14 over here, but he's trained in it. So they get a +2, if my math is correct off the top of my head, they get a +5. And that makes a big difference. And of course, the more that you go down in the training, the more skill that you have at doing a particular skill. This does not just occur to skills. This is how the whole system works. So this is how weapon proficiency works. So if you are trained in martial weapons, for example, you get that bonus. One of the biggest things that I would run into an issue with when teaching new players Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition was they would see this proficiency bonus and they would assume that that proficiency bonus went to everything that they were proficient in. And that was just not the case, especially armor. That was always a weird one. They were like, well, how come it doesn't work that way? And I'm like, I don't know, man, I didn't write the game. Here it does. So if you are trained in light armor, for example, you'll get that. You'll get the armor. You'll notice the ACs in armor are a lot lower. So they're like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers. And that's because you would get, if you're trained in it, you would get your stat bonus plus the level of proficiency, so 2, 4, 6, 8, plus your level. And so your AC does raise with you as you level up, but also as your training goes up. So it shows that you're getting better with that armor, better with that equipment, and just overall you're becoming more heroic as you go up. Along with that, they've built all kinds of unique and interesting abilities into skills. A skill check isn't just, I do this or I want to try that. There's actually a lot of abilities that you can do. Actually, they've pulled a lot of old things. The best example is probably Identify Magic. So they've pulled Identify Magic away from it being a spell to anybody can do Identify Magic if they have the Arcana skill. And they can just make the roll on the check, and if they are able to do it, then that's great. They can identify the magic. They've done Trip and Sunder and what are the other ones? Disarm. All of those are now athletics checks, and they're built into the skills. So now having skills are actually interesting, not just, and they have more of a use outside of just, I'm going to run up this hill or I'm going to try to swim. You can actually do things with those skills. Another one was one of my favorites is you have the medicine skill, which traditionally, yeah, you could bandage something or maybe stop bleeding or stabilize somebody. Well, now they could essentially act as a healer without having a dedicated healer in the party, right? So you don't necessarily have to have a cleric or somebody who has healing magic, because now anyone who's skilled in medicine can actually heal. So you can make a check to help with diseases, to help with poison, to get extra rolls with bonuses, or they can stop bleeding or stabilize. But on top of that, they can also heal hit points. It's a heal check, and depending on your mastery level, back to that mastery, depending on your mastery level, how much you can heal. But you start off healing with like 2d6, I think, which is pretty good for low level. And then I think you have to wait 10 minutes before you can do that again. But either way, it gives the ability to heal without using magic, which is traditionally something that's been missing from Pathfinder or from editions past. Without the exception of things like healing surges or hit die, I've not been a fan of the clumsy hit die in 5th edition. I know what they were going for, but it didn't really come across as clean as it should have. Built into that, you have critical successes and critical failures for just about all of your skill activities. So it's not just necessarily, I hit it or I heal the guy really well. Well, if you heal the guy really well, if you have a critical success, you do the 4d6 instead of the 2. So now you can have critical successes and failures with your skills, as well as your weapon attacks, and of course your spell attacks. And a lot of the spells actually have critical successes and critical failures. So you have some really wild stuff in there when you critically succeed with spells. But on top of that, a natural 20 and a natural 1 are no longer your straight success and straight crit failure. Now, 10 up above or 10 up below, the DC will also give you a critical success or critical failure. And the reason for this is it allows, as you scale up, and you were fighting monsters down here, say the goblin, right? Down here you were pretty much the same level and the same, I don't know, same challenge rating for each other, right? It was the same challenge, but you've leveled up, and this goblin maybe not so much. And so when you go back to fight these goblins, like when you're playing other role-playing games, you can smash the crap out of them because you're going to be critting them because their AC doesn't necessarily change too much, right? Like maybe 14 to 16 or something along those lines. But now you're going to be hitting for more up here, so you're going to be critting more down here, and you're going to be doing a lot more damage, and you're going to be having a lot more fun on the table. So what about running the game? How does Pathfinder 2nd Edition run? Well, honestly, it runs really smoothly. For as many options that are out there, it's really strange how streamlined the whole system is. The options are there for them to pick from, but it doesn't overcomplicate things over here on the Game Master's side so much. Matter of fact, the tables and charts for DCs are really rather simple. If they're untrained, it starts at 10, and then you just go up from there. It's that simple. Are you trained in perception? Well, yes, I'm a master. Excellent. That's what I'm going to look at. And a lot of your traps and your hazards that are built into the game, or even some of the monsters and their abilities, what you do is you just go off of, it'll say, like, you can't find this trap unless they're at least a master in thievery or a master in perception. And that way, you know that your party, they don't even see this trap. They will never be able to see this trap, and so they're going to get that one, and hopefully they can disable. Moving on from there, a lot of the things that people liked from Pathfinder 1st Edition was it was more simpler than 3rd edition, but they created the combat maneuver bonus, the CMB, and they built that into Pathfinder, and they built that into Starfinder. Well, what they did here in Pathfinder 2nd Edition is they removed the CMB completely. And now, instead of having opposed rolls, like say I want to trip this orc over here, and so I'm going to roll my strength plus whatever against his strength or dex, whichever's higher, that is no longer the case. Now, if I want to trip this guy, all I'm doing is I'm rolling against his reflex save. That's it. He doesn't make a roll. And what this does is one, it simplifies things way down. 2, if I fail, the only person that I can blame is on this side of the dice. There's nothing worse than making a roll to do something as a player, like say, you roll a 19. Almost a crit, but not quite. And you roll really high, and you're like, yeah, man, I got like a 35. And then over here, the GM's like, 20. Sorry, man. This way, if the roll is good over here, you're more than likely going to succeed. And anytime the players succeed and they're having a good time is a great time for you as a GM. As far as building encounters, what they've done is now all of your monsters, instead of having CRs, they threw away that challenge rating because quite frankly that math was obscene and I can't do math to save my soul. What they've done is they've just made them levels. So Orc is like level 1 or whatever. I don't know. I don't have the book in front of me. But the monster has a level. And as long as it is within 4 levels up or below your party level, so say if they're 3, anything, so see 3 is an even fight, obviously, 4, 5, 6, and 7. 7 would be an extremely difficult fight for them, but it's not impossible. As long as it's within that 4 level tier, you're good to go. And the further you go down here, it makes things a lot easier, if that makes sense. And of course, it's how the XP is based. So when you're looking to build your encounter, all you have to do is look at your party level and say, I want to do an even fight. And I want to say that an even level match for them is, I want to say it's a 80 XP pool. And then you look at this chart that's right next to it that says, okay, well, a monster 1 level below it is worth 20 XP. So then you'll pull, if they're level 4, you pull out a level 3 creature. Okay, well, there we go. There's 1 there, and then we're good. It's very quick and snappy versus all the traditional math that we're used to. On top of that, as a game master, specifically new players have issues with what kind of awards do I give my players? How do I reward them without accidentally giving them too much and then accidentally breaking my game? We've all had this. I know my very first game, running a game way back when 3rd edition first came out, I did that. I made that mistake. I'm like, here, man, here's a Vorpal sword. Have fun. And sure enough, man, they smashed the shit out of my game. Well, now they did the same thing. 2nd edition, Pathfinder 2nd edition does the same thing they did in Starfinder, and they apply levels to all of their items. So essentially, if you have a level 5 party, you shouldn't be giving them level 10 items. You can give them 5 or below, or 1 or 2 above is okay. 2, you're kind of pushing it, but 1 above is just fine, and you're not going to hurt anything, and the same thing with at their level or below. So this prevents you from accidentally overloading your players. There are rules in there for increasing the abilities of certain magical items. So say it's a +1 sword. You can actually use runes and other magic to increase things over time as long as it fits within that item level category. And again, you prevent your players from going too far. Another super easy piece as far as the GM is concerned is that instead of having crazy charts of XP, and I have friends that are like, oh, well, you're level 7, you should have 20,000 XP or some trash. Every 1,000 XP that a player earns, they level up. It's that simple. And actually, there's a chart in there. I think if you want to do a faster game, so if you want them to level up faster, it's 800. And if you want them to be like a longer, slower type game, I think maybe 12 or 15. But the point being is the base game is 1,000 XP. So yes, you're going to see lower numbers on the XP side, but you're going to be getting, it's consistent, is basically what I'm getting down to. And they also give you charts for how much XP does a trap give you, or a particular hazard, or an encounter. That way you build those encounters around your XP and around your budget, so you're not over dishing on your players, because you don't accidentally want to kill them. And well, unless you want to. But speaking of killing and death, probably one of the biggest measures that I will look at a new game of any kind, whether it's a D20 game, D100, is I want to see how they handle their death rules. And I will say that the death rules in Pathfinder 2nd Edition I've found to be really robust. And so here's how it works. You fall unconscious, right? Just like in Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition, you don't have negative hit points, you fall unconscious. And just like Dungeons & Dragons 5th Edition, you have these negative kind of death penalties, death saves is what they're called in 5th Edition. But here they're called recovery saves. And so you have different stages of death. You have unconscious, 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 is dead, 0 is stabilized. And each one of those is worth 1. So at 0, it's a flat DC of 10. Right? So you have to roll a DC, 20-sided die, no bonuses, straight 10. If you're at 1, then it's 11, 2, 12, 3, 13, so on and so forth. But again, once you hit 4, you're dead. Now, what makes it different from 5th Edition is instead of, hey, I succeed so I don't fall down, if you succeed, you go up a level. So let's say that you're at -3, or I'm sorry, at death 3, or exactly whatever the hell it's called. You're at 3. And you succeed. You roll 13 and you succeed, 13 or higher. Instead of staying here, you will actually go back up to 2. And then so it becomes easier to stay stabilized, but at the same time, you're not quite out of it yet. And so you can see a potential for going up and going down, and someone staying unconscious for quite a while, really. It really just depends. Hopefully your friends will get over there and help you by then. But it gives you that dynamic of going up and going down and, you know, bleeding out and things happening. Of course, if you take damage while you're down, you will drop a level. And if you're crit while you're down, you will take 2. So you have to be really careful of where you are, and hopefully your friends can get you out of there. The other thing that has annoyed me over the years is the lack of penalty for a player just in newer role-playing games where you just stand back up, you've got 1 hit point, and you're there and you're like, all right, now I need to do 1 more swing, and then you're immediately hit, you fall down, no repercussions. Not anymore. Not in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. No, they have the wounded condition. And what that does is it's just a number. So if I get back up, I have wounded 1. What does that mean? That means when I fall back down, because I will unless I run away or they drag me around or I heal again, it's going to make it even harder for me to stabilize. So now instead of my first DC being 11, now it's 12 because I'm adding this 1 over here. If I get back up and fall back down, that's 2. So now I start at 12, 13, 14, 15, etc. So the longer that you get up and get back down, that whole springboard that people do nowadays, you're going to die. You're just eventually going to die, and you should have learned from your mistake and crawled your way out of there. So I think I've talked enough about the mechanics of the game, and yeah, there's a whole lot more to go into, like how the action economy works. I mean, there's no more swift move in standard actions or full round actions. Every round you get 3 actions to do with however the hell you choose to do it. So if you want to move once and attack twice, attack 3 times, attack once, move twice, whatever the hell you want to do, it's your 3 actions to do it with. But that's a whole nother video, and I plan on getting into that stuff because there's a lot of differences in Pathfinder 2nd Edition between the first. What I can say as far as the quality of the book is it's exactly what you would expect from a Paizo product. It's beautiful. It's over 600 pages, just barely, like 605, 606. It is a bit stiff on the wording, and if I were to say anything negative about this product, I would say that it's sometimes a little bit difficult to find what you're looking for. Because there are so many different abilities in the game, they're not necessarily codified under a chapter that says abilities or actions. They're codified across the book where they're relevant, don't get me wrong, but they're not repeated anywhere else in a single location. So it can be difficult to find things. So for example, I was looking for dual wielding, like, because everybody likes to swing two swords. It doesn't necessarily exist, and it does exist at the same time. So anyone can dual wield. And you can essentially attack up to 3 times a round, like we discussed before, but you would take a penalty. So like your first swing's fine, and then -5, and then -10 maybe, I think, unless there's different weapons or different abilities, whatever, that's further in the stuff. But the point is there's penalties involved. You can 1, 2, 3, you can 1, 2, 3, whatever it may be. But dual wielding does exist in some abilities. Some of the abilities, some of the feats, I should say, some of the class feats, will give you the ability to attack twice with 2 weapons, or to shoot twice with a bow. So those things are there, they're just codified differently. Shield is a whole nother mechanic. Like having a shield, you don't necessarily just carry the shield and get the plus static, well, it would say +3 bonus, okay? You have the shield and it does nothing unless you take the action to ready the shield. Then you get the +3 bonus, and only then until the end of your next round, or till the beginning of your next round. There are some things that you can do, some reactions that you can take when your shield is raised, like blocking damage that basically act as damage reduction, and some other cool things, but that's not readily known unless you really dig into different parts of the game. To be honest, I read it once, and I was like, okay, this is pretty cool, but there's a lot of things that I don't understand. So I did have to go back and read through it again. I did go out on YouTube and listen to some videos that are, kind of like this, not reviews, but, some people that really dove into things to try to learn a little bit. That would be my only complaint, is that even though it is simplified, if you're looking at it from the first edition mindset of, okay, well, this is Pathfinder, so this is Pathfinder 2, it can't be that different. And then you try to find those differences that are there. Forget it. Look at it like it's a brand new game, because it is. It really is a brand new game. It's a wonderful game. I will say this, that yeah, it took a bit for me to get to understand and to absorb the material that's there, but I will say the game is simpler. I would find that this is a happy medium between the crunchiness and choice options of Pathfinder 1st edition and the simplicity but lack of options that 5th edition has. It's this nice middle space. They simplified it like 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. They codified a lot of things like 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons, but they kept the options. They built out, not up, and that gives richer characters that can do more things where your players are having a lot more fun. It's a great game to look at. It's got beautiful art and beautiful pages, the things that you would always expect from Paizo. They're still supporting 1st edition, which is fantastic, but here in 2nd edition, you already have the adventure paths that are coming out. You've got condition cards and all the goodies that you can expect from Paizo and all the full support. The best thing is that you don't have to take my word for it. Matter of fact, you can go down to the link below that I've got down here and you can look at the SRD for free, because we're still operating under the open gaming license, which means that you don't have to pay, Paizo millions of dollars to get access to things that you, already have. D&D Blonde. And you can just see. You can just see what the game is. You can see what the classes are, what the feats are, what the rules are, and you can take your own time. You can take your own time to go through it, look at it, judge for yourself. But I guarantee you that if you actually take the time to look at it and really learn what it's about, give them your money, because it's a beautiful game. It's a fun game, and I can't wait to continue doing adventures in Pathfinder 2nd edition for years to come, because I know that we're going to be here for a while. Thank you all for joining me today. I hope that you enjoyed this review of Pathfinder 2nd Edition. We're going to go over here in the next few weeks, few months, and we're really going to do a deep dive into how do you play this game, how does combat work, skills, creating characters. Spells are a little different, you know, we need to talk about that. And you know what, we might even do some interesting character builds that we find at the table. I'm getting ready to start we did a couple one-shots, but now we're going to start a campaign here in a few days. And I'll try to pull some of those weird character builds that are out there, because I tell you, we're going to have some interesting builds in Pathfinder 2nd Edition over the years. As a matter of fact, this game's been out for a month now. Go ahead and tell me in the comment section below what unique and interesting classes that you've come up with and your different archetypes and things that you've been able to do with Pathfinder 2nd Edition. If you guys like these kind of videos, go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button. I know that you probably get tired of hearing it from everybody under the sun, but really that's how we get seen, it's how we get views, and it's how we're able to spread our message, so to speak. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and if you've made it this far, you have a wonderful week, and we'll see you again soon. Later.